Hey guys, it's Ted Bogert. Welcome back to the TED Show. I'm excited to have Laurie Keit on the show. I love this topic. You are what you eat. So don't be fast, cheap, easy, or fake. I laughed every time you said it, but I knew that there was seriousness in it every time I read it. So we're super excited to hear about your journey. Welcome to the show, Laurie. How you doing?
Great. Thanks, Ted. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
I'm so excited. You have such a unique, varied background. I read enough to be dangerous, which you're going to share with us. We're going to talk about seasonalcelebrations.com because that's the website scrolling across there. But you know that they always love, everybody in the audience loves an origin story. So if you can tell us a little bit about you, maybe your journey to get to where we can talk about You Are What You Eat.
Okay, terrific. I started in the music industry. I did record promotion and I was a disc jockey.
I love that. You did music promo, like you were a promo for concerts?
For record distribution.
Nice.
And getting our artists played on radio stations back in the day when there was vinyl.
Only you and I remember that, Laurie.
Yeah, way back when. And then I went into technology because you can't eat vinyl. And while it was great and, you know, free tickets and all of that, I needed money. So I went into high tech. I did telecommunications, voice data, IP network sales and management for 25 years. And finally decided that that wasn't my passion. My passion was plants, it was flowers, it was nature. And so I retrained as a garden designer and eventually
that
as
is a shift. That's a shift. Yeah. Technology to garden. So that means you have both sides of the brain going on right there, which neither side of my brain functions too often. But to go from technology, I really want to go back to one thing you said, because we talk about it on the show all the time. After 25 years, you realized it was time to make a leap. What was the impetus? What was the final straw, the final catalyst for you to make that leap? Because we have a lot of people who watch the show and they're looking to make a leap. They're looking to go from technology to gardening or technology to plants and flowers or whatever their passion is. And they're afraid. So what was your final motivator to do that?
There wasn't enough money in the world to... There just wasn't enough money. I was going into the third quarter. I wanted to control my day. I wanted to be able to control who I met with. I wanted to be able to schedule my own day. I wanted to wake up in my own bed next to my husband and not in some hotel room where I woke up and didn't know where I was. Yeah. You know, there just wasn't enough money.
You took your life back. You at some point it became, the money's just not worth this lifestyle that I'm leading.
And crying for, you know, an hour and a half one-way commute, crying the whole way, crying on the way home because I hated it. It was no longer fulfilling. There was nothing in it for me. No job satisfaction, you know, nothing but money, and the money wasn't enough.
The money is very empty. People think that if they make enough money, they can do anything. And honestly, if you're an entrepreneur, I kind of get that thought process. But if you're working for someone and you don't have control of your life, your schedule, your world, there is not enough money on the planet for me to go back to anything corporate. I don't ever want to do that again, because if you're a creative on any level, technology creative, a gardening creative, it is just not worth selling your soul for that, because eventually you're going to wake up tired and exhausted and wonder where your life went.
You are right on my train.
I'm there. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So we get to gardening, we get to nature. It's one thing to have a passion for it. It's another thing to turn it into a business that can actually pay the bill. Because I guess you could eat the flowers, like you can't eat the vinyl. Maybe you can eat what's in the garden, but that's not the point. The point is for you to build better, to have better, to be comfortable, but still live the life that you want. So what was that like, though, to actually make that your vocation?
It started with going back to school and learning what I was doing, figuring it out. You know, I would not recommend that people do it the way I did it. I kind of made this spontaneous, I'm out of here, I'm done. I took 6 months off. I did my business plan. I went to, you know, the courses and all this. I went back to school, and that was over a period of years learning. And then I jumped. So I like to say, you know, why not go out on a limb? Isn't that where the fruit is? And so I did, but I financed it on my credit cards.
No, this is so good. Thank you for sharing that, because I think people are like, oh, well, she had a ton of money in the bank, or of course she could make the leap because she had saved money for 10 years and da, 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 da. And it just doesn't really happen like that.
No, it does not. And you need a plan. You need some resources, small business loan, you know, something that's going to give you some leeway. I didn't do that. And my timing was poor. So it corresponded with the last big recession.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah, not ideal. So
and you know, but a lot of people were taking leaps then, kind of like, well, they had to. First of all, there was no choice at the time. But then I also feel like a lot of people took a leap last year. So tell us what you did to cultivate and continue to grow your business, because you're, and I know you're gonna, I think you're gonna say this, what your picture of in the beginning of how it would be and how you are now aren't necessarily, you had a lot of traveling to do to get from point A to point B.
Absolutely.
So how did you do it? So you began, you took courses, and then how did you figure out how to fine tune it? Because that's also what I think a lot of people miss is, okay, I've got this idea, I've made the leap, I've done everything. And now how do I make this a viable business?
What I did was I joined a professional organization that would help me and put me in contact with my peers. I interviewed people, found out what they were doing, did a lot of research online, talked to my customers, put together a survey for garden design, you know, to find out how they envisioned their garden, how they envisioned spending time in the garden, their personal preferences in terms of color, plant material, were there any allergies, were there children, who else was using it, was there limited access, you know, someone that had mobility issues, that kind of thing. And then studied, you know, the plants and tried to get out there and promote myself. After 7 years, I was bored. I get bored easily. And so I retrained as a floral designer.
Wow. Because
I figured, what's the difference between a flower in a nursery can or a flower in a bridal bouquet? True. So I went back to school and I started doing weddings. And it really fulfilled me to be part of someone's special day and to create some beautiful flowers and things like that. So I've been doing that since 2008. And that is coming to an end.
It's coming to an end. Why?
It's coming to an end. In the last year, I've had 2 shoulder operations, and I've retorn my rotator and the tendons. Doing another wedding in November. So I'm going to be on garden design full time. Now, you asked what the journey was, and the COVID kind of thing caused a big pivot for me. So I have been gardening personally in an aeroponic gardening system for 10 years. And when COVID hit and I went to our local grocery store, not only was there no toilet paper and no hand sanitizer, but there was no produce. Pardon me. There was no lettuce. There was no vegetables, nothing. And I realized, since we're also sitting on the San Andreas Fault, waiting for California to drop into the Pacific at some point, we need to have our own food. And people have gotten so disconnected from growing.
Yes.
you know, and little kids, they think potatoes come from Safeway. They have no concept of where our food comes from.
They don't.
They don't. So I started teaching people how to grow their own produce indoors or out in less than 30 inches of space using 98% less water, because we're also in a drought. And it's been great. So that's part of my garden design practice now. And I'm selling these hydroponic systems, Aeroponic, which is cycles of air and water to grow instead of soil. And that's where the don't be fake comes in, because I've recently done a YouTube program. I've started a series on America's food crisis.
Really? Tell us about that.
The first portion of the crisis, which has been going on for decades, is about our farmers and what challenges they're facing. And it's not just foreign land grabs, which have been prevalent for decades, but it's also the fact that we're running out of topsoil as a planet. We are down on our topsoil, and it's eroding faster than it can be created by nature. So figure 500 years to create an inch. 95% of the world's food is grown in topsoil, and we're losing it. And it could be gone within 100 years. So then what? The other critical factor is our aquifers globally are running dry. We are using up our groundwater faster than it can be replenished. Pardon me, dropped my phone.
You're fine. So, that's what's great about live TV.
Yeah. So between those two things, we've got a serious problem. So that was the first program. It's only 10 minutes. It's on YouTube. And the second one I did was on the chemical crisis. We are literally poisoning ourselves and the planet with pesticide, herbicide, and fungicide. And the EPA is not even regulating Roundup, which is an herbicide weed killer. And it is in almost all the food we eat. It's in grains, cereal, crackers, spaghetti, beans, hummus. It's in everything. And it's also in the groundwater, and it's in the atmosphere. So when it's raining Roundup on us.
So tell people why that's a big deal, because I think people hear, oh, pesticides have been around forever. I mean, obviously, I haven't died yet. I can't tell you to say that. So tell us why we should be worried about this.
If you don't want a future that has cancer in it, you need to be concerned. Only 6% of the food that's being manufactured and grown and we're consuming as a populace is organic. Everything else is testing positive. The Environmental Working Group is an organization that actually protects people, pets, the planet, the environment. And they just came out with the Dirty Dozen. Strawberries, which are coming into season now here in California, are once again, for the 6th year in a row, the most heavily contaminated fruit out there. And they're testing positive for a dozen or more pesticides on strawberries. Kale has 18 different pesticides on it. Now, the big deal here is Roundup. And Bayer, who owns Monsanto, which produces Roundup, just settled I think it was like $120 billion lawsuit, or $20 billion. I mean, it's a huge number.
Wow.
For a class action suit of 125,000 claimants who got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma from exposure to Roundup. Oof. So basically, we're eating this stuff every day. Cheerios has 5 times the legal limit. So if you're eating any kind of Cheerios, especially Honey Nut, if you eat Goldfish crackers, if you eat Nature Valley granola bars, if you're eating pasta, all of this, you're consuming Roundup. So if you wouldn't take a jug of it and drink it, you shouldn't be eating these foods. You should be buying organic.
So how do we escape that? Let's talk about organic for a minute, because I think people hear you and I believe that they believe what you're saying, but then you hear the word organic. We talked about this on a show recently, and you don't really know if it's really organic or not.
Okay.
People don't know the difference or really how to shop for it.
Okay. So I mentioned the environmental working group. There are guides to food labels, and I did 3 slides of those in my America's Food Crisis presentation, part 2. So if you go onto YouTube and you go onto Virtual Tower Garden Party, you'll see that presentation. It's only 10 minutes long, and it has a list of resources on there that will give you all of this information that you're looking for. Basically, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, before DDT, actually, it's been longer than that, sadly. DDT was the late 30s. Yes. And that started the whole chemical cycle, the whole production of chemicals and the agrochemical industry. That's when we started to go downhill. Okay. Before that, everything was organic. In other words, it was chemical free. It was grown with sun, soil, water, and, you know, we weren't dumping things on it. Okay.
Why did we add that to our culture? What was going on? Was there something in the farming world?
The war was going on, Agent Orange, and it was a chemical weapon, and they discovered that it would kill insects. And so we started that, and then everybody sees and smells money, and so they start producing. So at one time, there were over 10,000 different products, patents being submitted and flooding the market. Now, the deal with Roundup, and this is what's so frightening to me, is that the EPA, who is tasked with protecting us, has virtually ignored scientific data for decades, showing sizable amounts of proof that it causes cancer, and they've ignored it. And
why? Because they're in their back pockets?
Yeah, pretty much, I think. I mean,
what else would be the reason for that? Is people don't understand that there's power. You know, it's funny because when people will say to me, well, the government wouldn't let us eat anything that we shouldn't eat. And I'm like, you are so under a rock. I don't know where you've been. The government has certain things that work and a lot of things that don't. And I think
lobbying.
Yes, lobbying. You all do not, if you haven't ever dealt with lobbyists or lobbying, I can tell you they are powerful human beings and companies. And they really are the ones, in my opinion, that guide our policy making, our exceptions that we do, Roundup will use. They really do put the money in the back pockets of the people who could actually protect us. And a lot of that protection doesn't happen. Am I pretty much on that?
You are dead on. Absolutely correct.
It's frustrating as a consumer too, because we get confused, and I'm one of them. I see organic and then I'm told, well, it's not organic if it doesn't say this, this, or this. And then they allow certain things to say organic or natural or no sugar added, or
correct.
There's all sorts of confusing labels that they continue to try to make less confusing. And I feel like a lot of times we are more confused by what's going on.
You are correct. To simplify it, there's a little round label. It's green. It says USDA certified organic. That's the one you want.
That's the one, right?
USDA certified organic. But they have different ones for produce. They have different ones for meat products, animal products. And again, the resources are in that presentation that I did. There's several different websites, but the EWG.org is an excellent one. And
what's EWG stand for?
Environmental Working Group.
Fantastic.
So it's a nonpartisan organization that protects people and the planet. And it's an excellent.
So that's the real. I think what people need is they look for resources. So if they'll go to their local. I'm Florida, so I'll use Publix for example. And Publix has a organic, non-GMO aisle one aisle, by the way, half an aisle, I think. But at least it's an aisle, and people will shop there. And then some of that stuff I see, I wouldn't say it has that label you're talking about on it. It doesn't have a little circle, but somebody has gotten around whatever the requirements are, and they box it, label it, and you don't know. Yeah. And when you're going in to try to get a quick snack, you really don't want to read all of the stuff. And yet you have places like Whole Foods and that I feel like at least there's some options there. But sometimes I go in there and it's not all completely copacetic either. No offense. So nothing against these places, because at least there's options. Back in the day, you had nothing. You went to your local grocery store and you just bought what they had. There was no Amazon or Whole Foods or any of that. So I feel like we've progressed. I don't know how far, but I also think it's confused people too.
It has, and they've done it intentionally. A lot of these food manufacturers, a lot of the food, it's not even food, it's chemicals. It's a chemical cocktail. It's sodium, it's sugar, it's fat. Canola oil is just horrible for you.
And yet it's in so much if you look.
It's high fructose corn syrup. I mean, it's ridiculous. You have to look at the labels to understand what you're consuming. And I like juice sometimes. So I'll use grapefruit. I'll use grape juice because I just looked at this last night. So we bought grape juice. You know, it's got all the labels. It all looks pretty. And then I go and look and I'm like, okay, there's 7 ingredients. I have no idea what they are. Yeah. So I'm fully aware. But, you know, what happens is you're like, I'll roll the dice. Let's hope it doesn't impact me. Now, I'm a cancer survivor, so I get that whole thought process of you are what you eat. But I think people, if it's not easy to do or it's not super on their level, whatever that is, they just don't do it. They just hope for the best. You can let your so there's 2 control mechanisms, right? One is your taste buds. Yes. One is your brain. So which would you rather put your health in the hands of? Your brain or your taste buds?
You and I both. However, I'm going to tell you, you already know this answer. Most people would probably say their taste buds.
No.
You know, they would. Like, and look, I'm guilty of it too. Sometimes I taste something and I'm like, I know that is fake or chemical, but God, they put whatever in it, and then I can't not eat it. It's terrible. But I'm aware of it when I'm doing it. So that's the little difference. Doesn't make me any better than anybody else because I'm still doing it. But I think that people, because we're a society that wants immediate gratification.
I was just going to say instant gratification.
They got to have it. So if I can have it, if I can go to McDonald's and order it organic, okay, I'm in. But if you make me work for it, look at the ingredients, read a label, God forbid, that's just not going to happen in most people's daily lives. It just doesn't. And I feel bad. I want to educate, which is why this show and people like you are so important. All right. So we have to talk really fast about seasonalcelebrations.com. Tell us about that. Tell us the best way people can reach you and how they can learn more about what you do and the services you offer.
Okay. So seasonalcelebrations.com is my company website. And on it, you'll see my garden design, my floral design, my tower garden. You can reach me on my cell, which is 650-722-0091, or via my email, which is Laurie, Laurie, at seasonalcelebrations.com. If anyone has any questions, the 2 YouTube videos that I did are on virtualtowergardenparty.com, which is a monthly broadcast that we do. And there's 5 of us, so it's a different speaker each month. But I'll be continuing that series. So the first one's on farming, the second one's on chemicals. And as Ted was saying, it will also have information on all of the links that you need to know and the degree that our health as a society has declined because of the food that we're eating. So the diabetes rate, half of us have high blood pressure. Childhood diabetes is, on the rise between preteen and teenagers. And it's all due to food. A lot of it is due to what we're eating. So it's just a little bit of education can put you on a healthier track for life.
Well, we definitely want to have you back. You have to come up with some fun topics we can all make fun of each other on, because honestly, it's all about self-deprecating, because we all mess up.
Hey, I'll show you my fat pictures. I've had weight problems my whole life, and I'll show you my fat pictures.
See this, and that's why we would love for you to come back, by the way, and talk more about any topic you want. So Laurie Keit, seasonalcelebrations.com. I love this topic. So much great information. Thank you. Reach out to her. She's just as easily accessible and wonderful as she is on this broadcast. Thank you for sharing. I think it's so important what you're doing, really. And so I want you to come back on anytime you want, talk about some things that we all probably need to hear and that we aren't listening to. That's how we roll in America. Anyway.
That's how we roll.
Probably all over the world. But thank you so much. That was a joy to have you on, Laurie. Thanks so much.
Appreciate it, Ted.
All right, guys, we'll see you soon. I'll be back soon. Reach out to Laurie. You know you are what you eat. So let's try to figure out how to get past that. Seasonalcelebrations.com. Reach out to Laurie. See you soon.